The genocide in Gaza has never ended. Ceasefires have been broken, bombings have continued, aid has been restricted, and mass displacement remains part of daily reality. What is happening in Gaza is not a post-war phase, but the continuation of unrelenting destruction. There is a major political and media deception in the way Gaza is discussed, as if genocide were a moment, a peak, a temporary explosion of violence that was later closed off by some fragile ceasefire or diplomatic statement. But the reality emerging from the facts of recent months is far darker. In Gaza, even when there has been talk of a ceasefire, killings have continued. Even when there has been talk of aid, its entry has been restricted. Even when there has been talk of stabilization, civilians have remained under attack, under displacement, and under an order imposed by force. AP reported this week that, despite the October 2025 ceasefire, daily Israeli strikes have continued, and more than 650 Palestinians have been killed since then, while the overall number of Palestinians killed since the beginning of the war has surpassed 72,000. That is why the problem is not only that the war continues. The problem is that the destruction of Gaza has become a permanent condition, an imposed normality. On March 19, 2026, the United Nations warned that humanitarian partners are seeking more funding and fast, safe, and unimpeded access for aid, while OCHA said on March 12 that the situation in Gaza remains dire, with strikes, bombardment, and gunfire continuing to cause civilian casualties. This means that even now, in March 2026, Gaza is not living through a period of recovery, but through the continuation of crisis in different forms. One of the clearest signs that the plan against Gaza has not stopped is the way humanitarian aid has been handled. In January 2026, AP reported that Israel had revoked the licenses of more than 3 dozen humanitarian organizations, making their work in Gaza far more difficult. Even in late December 2025, AP reported that Israel was shutting down the operations of several humanitarian organizations in Gaza, while the organizations themselves warned that these measures would harm an already desperate civilian population. These are not side details. They are part of the mechanism through which a society is kept in a condition of exhaustion, dependence, and extreme insecurity. The hunger crisis makes this continuity equally clear. It is true that Reuters reported in December 2025 that the global hunger monitor said Gaza was no longer officially in famine, following improved access to aid and commercial supplies after the October ceasefire. But this relief does not mean the end of a policy of strangulation. Reuters also reported in September 2025 that Israel had closed an access route into northern Gaza, deepening shortages in an area where UN agencies and Oxfam had warned that hundreds of thousands of people were experiencing extreme hunger. So even when one technical indicator temporarily improves, the structure of danger remains exactly the same. Access to food, medicine, and survival depends on military and political decisions made by a power that controls entry and exit. This is also where the gravest question begins. Are we dealing simply with war, or with a broader project against Gaza and Palestinians? Legally, that question has not been closed. The International Court of Justice is still examining the case South Africa versus Israel under the Genocide Convention, and the case remained active in March 2026 with new procedural interventions from other states. This means that the accusation of genocide is not a random slogan. It is the subject of an ongoing process before the highest court of the United Nations. At the same time, the fact that the court has imposed provisional measures since 2024 shows that the risk of serious and irreparable harm to Palestinians has been treated as a grave matter of international law. Politically and materially, the picture is even darker. AP reported this week that the Rafah crossing will reopen only for limited passenger movement, not for goods, while medical evacuations remain highly restricted. This shows that even where a relief is presented, it is narrow, controlled, and far from the real needs of a population devastated for months and years. Gaza is not being allowed to breathe. It is being kept in a condition where survival is permitted only in minimal doses. That is why to say that the genocide in Gaza is over would be not only morally blind, but factually indefensible. The legal term may still be debated until a final court ruling is reached, but the continuity of destruction cannot be debated. Ongoing bombardments, civilians being killed, aid blocked or restricted, humanitarian organizations obstructed, mass displacement, and an entire territory kept in a state of managed ruin. The United Nations, AP, and Reuters make it clear that Gaza is not in the chapter after the war. It's still inside it. And that leads to the gravest conclusion of all. Israel is not acting as if its objective were merely the neutralization of Hamas. From the effects on the ground, the picture that emerges is one of destruction targeting the population, civilian infrastructure, movement, food, health, and the very possibility of normal Palestinian life in Gaza. That is why, for many observers, jurists, and activists, what is happening is read not as a limited military operation, but as the continuation of a broader project against Gaza and Palestinians in general. This is a political analysis based on the consequences being reported, not a final legal judgment. The world may change its vocabulary however it likes. It may speak of escalation, sporadic fighting, a humanitarian crisis, or regional complexity. But on the ground, for the Palestinians of Gaza, the reality remains simpler and more brutal. Death has not stopped, hunger has not disappeared, displacement has not ended, and the plan to keep Gaza on its knees continues.